I recently spoke with Professor Chris Wilkins about the staggering results from the annual New Zealand Drug Trends Survey. It showed meth use in New Zealand has doubled in the last year. And while we've also seen a rise in drug busts and seizures, experts believe they won't shift the dial, and that seriously we need to address demand as the only way to solve the issue. The New Zealand Drug Foundation says hitting the supply side is short-lived because as one supply source is removed, another steps in to meet the demand. And as a country, we need to be bold and get serious about reducing demand, preventing harm, and making addiction treatment more accessible to people. The Foundation's Executive Director is Sarah Helm. It's always good to have her on the show. Sarah, good afternoon.
G'day. I just actually stopped and bought some butter. It's a little bit atrocious, but anyway,
how
different
much?
matter.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I managed to get a very small amount for $10, but yeah. Anyway.
I know, different topic, but I'm yeah. All right, look, you say, Sarah, we've got to be bold. It's not just about drug busts and seizures. Can we start by looking at a few ideas the Foundation has put forward? You would like the government to adopt a rapid escalation of addiction treatment. This includes investment in community-based or peer-led groups. Can you give more detail on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's evident that just relying on seizures and busts isn't working. Not that I want to place all of the blame for the increase in methamphetamine consumption over on that side of things. Just as a model on its own, it won't fix things. And in fact, we can see that. It's pretty evident. We've got the largest amount of drug consumption, particularly methamphetamine, that we've ever had. So we definitely need to do things differently. And so when you do have a drug bust occur, somebody else will rush in to meet that unmet demand, basically. So you've taken away one source of supply, the people with addiction, etc., are still there, and so someone else steps in to provide it. So we definitely need to get demand side. So yes, we've put out a range of ideas about what those measures could be.
So let's look at, because I'm not aware of what this group does. So you're talking about like revamping, expanding health-based responses like Te Ara Oranga. Can you explain a bit more about what they do?
Yeah, so there was a program up in sort of Northland that was actually police-led in conjunction with health and some other community providers working together to do a whole of community response. So they were getting people access to treatment early on. They were putting out messages into the community. They were working alongside people who had some lived experience. They were getting people into employment, a whole range of things. Right. And for many years now, we've been calling for that to be expanded. At this point, it needs probably a revamp as well as being expanded, but that actually had proven quite successful, although it's dwindled. But there are some other things that also need ramping up, like you mentioned before. Really, we have very little access to addiction treatment nationally. There's big wait lists and so forth. Now, with methamphetamine, you don't necessarily need everyone to go to residential. That's sort of what you hear on TV. But a lot of people with methamphetamine use and addiction can get help for addiction closer to home in a more accessible and actually what ends up being cheaper way, for example, like peer-led groups. So, yeah, AA is a well-known version of that type of help. Yeah, so it can work quite well, actually. So we're calling for that sort of thing to be ramped up in terms of the help side of things.
It's interesting too about the like Te Ara Oranga, the health-based responses. It makes sense if you've got the community working in it, like you said was led by police, but you've got people in the community that may have experience with it, understand what is happening in their community. It makes sense that they can also be the ones that can help, or if they get funded, or if they've got support.
Yeah, that's right.
For people.
Yep. And they had like peers who had lived experience who knew the people who are involved in drug use and supply at within their community, so it made it easier to knock on their doors and so forth also. Yeah.
This is an interesting one, Sarah. I wasn't aware. Where does ADHD come into this?
Yeah, so we weren't aware particularly either until a few years ago. I think probably we would have hazarded a guess that people with ADHD might be more likely to get up to mischief, if you like, and maybe use substances. But
Mm.
actually, what we've found is quite staggering. That the research from Australia and internationally seems to suggest almost half of people who use illegal stimulants like methamphetamine have untreated ADHD. So that actually provides us with a bit of an opportunity. So the reason that they might be seeking it out
Yeah.
is indeed being a bit naughty perhaps, but also a stimulant for somebody with ADHD can be quite calming. So it might be what they're prescribed. Yeah,
Right.
so we might be able to make quite a big dent in demand if we actually get in there and try and address that. So we're really keen to explore that further. I've got one of my team working furiously to try and pull as much data at the moment as we possibly can on how to bring some of that information into practice. And we have been talking about it within the sector for a while, and we're hearing back from people. I had a chat to two 71-year-olds that are leading health services at a community level, addiction services, at a community level last week. Both of them were like, oh, yes, of course. Actually, I have it, and and now this is making some sense, because often our addiction treatment sector have their own experiences of addiction. So, yeah, it's a thing that might actually, it's the most hope that I've had that we might be able to make a difference to demand in a real way than many things I've seen in years, to be honest.
It's definitely interesting. My gosh. You'd also like to see investigating a medication-assisted treatment option. So for people with meth dependence, is that being offered another medication to help get off it? Is that what it would look like?
Yeah, look, there have been some studies. It's in the same ballpark as looking at the ADHD treatment. There was a study recently, came out of Australia. They used a medicine called lisdexamfetamine, which is one of the ADHD meds, and people were more successful at achieving their treatment, going through addiction treatment. So at the moment, people go through addiction treatment and don't necessarily succeed. And so this medication had helped them actually be successful. So it's something, again, it's emerging evidence. We're furiously trying to wrap our heads around it to offer the best advice. Again, we've offered some before, but offer some more. Yeah.
You've met with the new Mental Health Minister, Sarah Matt Ducey. Do you genuinely feel like this government is ready to act, or is it still early days, do you think?
I'm hopeful there'll be some action. Look, we've got great admiration for Minister Ducey. He is trained in addictions, so he brings a lot of knowledge and expertise, and he has been willing to listen as well. So several weeks ago, he hosted us at Parliament. We had a couple of hundred people from across the sector, all types of walks of life came along, and we discussed some of the big issues that we're facing, including this one around methamphetamine, and he really has listened and is taking that in. So we're hopeful that will get taken up as they consider what to do next on these issues. Yeah. And the stuff that we're recommending here is the kind of stuff that the sector brought up during that day. Yeah.
Is there anything overseas, Sarah, that we can learn from when it comes to tackling meth use differently? Is there somewhere you've looked at and gone, I like what they've done, or